Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The series is about a very dangerous virus that spreads across the entire world, causing conflicts and major wars among people. Cannibals also emerge, and violence is everywhere. However, the virus doesn't reach just one area, Helgoland in Germany, the only safe place in the entire world, isolated from the rest. Only 113 people live there, and of course, all resources on the island are very limited. They try their best to manage things in order to survive. They establish strict laws, and everyone follows them. One of those laws is that whenever a child is born, someone must be sacrificed in exchange so that the population remains the same and doesn't increase. Anyone who breaks these laws gets their name placed at the bottom of the list, meaning they'll be the next to die when a child is born. At that point, they vote on who should die, and after 15 years of the virus spreading, the system remains in place. Emily giving birth, surrounded by a large group of people filming the process. Emily delivers a beautiful, healthy baby, and all her family congratulates her. Her father approaches her, kisses her, and then immediately heads to the top of the mountain, where we learn that he is going to sacrifice himself for the newborn. He says goodbye to all his family and friends before his death. Then, the clinic, where Dr. Merrick rushes to Emily upon realizing she's actually pregnant with twins. Something no one noticed before due to the clinic's limited equipment, which made it difficult to perform proper scans. The island council gathers shortly after to discuss what to do about the second child. Some believe that they shouldn't do anything and let the second child live without sacrificing anyone, arguing that increasing the population to 114 wouldn't be a problem. However, many disagree, fearing that making an exception now could lead to future issues, with many demanding exceptions, which could spiral out of control. At the end of the meeting, Beatrice decides to hold a vote among the people. The news spreads on TV, reminding everyone of the list of names, and Christian realizes he's ranked 511th. He feels at risk, knowing it could easily be his turn to die. He states that if he's chosen, he won't willingly throw himself to his death. His friend Henry tries to calm him, reminding him of the last person who refused to comply with the decision. That person was brutally tied up and thrown into the ocean until he died a horrific death. In the 512th position is Elise, an elderly woman who feels it would be easier if she were chosen to die because she's old and can no longer contribute much. She spends her time crying over her situation. In the 513th and last position is Etienne, who is widely regarded as a criminal deserving of death, though he continually denies this, swearing he's just a hardworking man who loves his job. Next, Dr. Merrick in the lab with his son, Linus. They are working tirelessly, trying to develop a vaccine for the virus. Merrick feels deeply frustrated as he's been working for a long time without making any progress. Their lab lacks crucial materials and equipment, which heavily impacts their research. Afterward, Merrick and Judy head out to deliver medicine to the islanders. Along the way, they encounter Etienne, and his wife, Lisa, blames Judy for Etienne being placed last on the list. Judy tries to defend herself, saying Etienne stole medicine and had to be punished, and that it wasn't her fault. Lisa argues that Etienne had no choice but to steal because they refused to give him the medicine when she was ill and in desperate need of it. She also reveals that Etienne was further punished by being denied food for 4 days. A neighbor interrupts their argument, handing Lisa a helping hand that she had offered him Eric. At this point, Merrick realizes that Etienne and his wife are buying votes. Lisa pleads with him not to report this to Beatrice, and Merrick responds by saying he's doing everything he can to protect them. At this point, Emily wakes up to a noise and goes to see what's happening. She finds Elise in the room with her baby, holding him. Emily gets terrified, thinking Elise wants to kill her baby to save herself. Elise defends herself, saying she would never think of harming a child and that Emily is wronging her. She explains that she heard the baby crying and was only trying to comfort him. Meanwhile, we return to Merrick, who secretly visits Laura to give her medicine, with Judy standing by and noticing everything. Judy later tells Beatrice about what's happening when they meet in the supermarket. Beatrice asks her not to tell anyone because they need Merrick for his knowledge, especially at this time, and urges Judy to focus on learning everything from him as quickly as possible so she can eventually replace him. At the same time, a boy accidentally drops something that breaks on the floor. Someone suggests to Christian that this is his chance to improve his image in front of the people. He approaches the boy, gives him an apple, and tries to comfort him, saying the accident wasn't his fault. Another woman also approaches the boy and gives him a small gift. Beatrice witnesses the entire scene and decides to reward both Christian and the woman with an extra point for helping the boy. Later, Henry runs into Etienne and Lisa at the supermarket and tells them he'll be working in the storeroom all day and can secretly take some food to hide for himself. Lisa argues with him, saying what he's doing is wrong and dangerous, warning him that if anyone finds out, It will cause huge problems and could put his life at risk. She tries to stop him, but Henry rudely tells her to stay out of his business and that he can do whatever he wants. As he walks away, he drops a tomato, which Etienne picks up and eats, frustrating Lisa even more. Unfortunately for them, Beatrice sees the entire situation and follows Henry outside, scolding him for his bad behavior. She tells him she won't be able to protect him all the time. From their conversation, it's revealed that Henry is actually her son, but he tries to distance. Marek returns to the lab, puts on his suit, and opens the back door. A patient named Peter, who is infected with the virus, kept isolated for experimentation to find a cure. Marek injects him with a substance, and Peter feels a bit better, giving Marek hope that the medicine might be effective. Meanwhile, Lisa secretly meets with Henry, asking to take some of the food he's stealing, realizing there's no other option. Suddenly, an alert goes off, warning that people from the mainland are trying to force their way onto the island. Henry gives Lisa a food can, and they both rush to help the guards at the shore, where they see people approaching. The guards warn the intruders to stay back or they'll be shot, but when they don't listen, they open fire, killing one of them. The rest, scared for their lives, retreat, but Henry continues shooting at them, trying to kill them all. His commander yells at him for his actions. Later, the islanders gather for the vote. With the new point system, Christian's rank changes, and he is no longer in the last stage. The voting begins, and Etienne receives the most votes to be executed. Suddenly, Lisa stands up and accuses Henry of assaulting her, claiming he deserves to die instead. Other women also come forward with the same accusation, saying that Henry took advantage of his control over food, forcing them to comply in exchange for meals. Despite Henry denying the claims and saying everything was consensual, the women insist he exploited them. The crowd turns against Henry, and Beatrice tries to calm them down. She acknowledges Henry's wrongdoing and agrees he should be punished. A revote is held, and the majority decides Henry should be the one to die. However, Beatrice, unable to bring herself to kill her son, suggests banishing him from the island instead. The people protest, but Beatrice ignores them and orders the guards to imprison Henry. Louise records the entire event on video, later editing out the people's protests before sharing it. Marek returns to the lab to find Peter's condition has worsened. He gives him another injection, promising to help him, but Peter dies shortly after. Marek is forced to burn his body. The next morning, Linus tells Marek he plans to join the exploration group of 100 people heading to the mainland to gather the latest information on the virus and find a faster way to develop a cure. Marek tries to convince Linus to reconsider, warning that it's too dangerous and could cost him his life. But Linus decides to face his fears and go ahead with his plan. The residents of the island gathering at the shore to bid farewell to the expedition team heading to the mainland. They bring Henry along to exile him there, and although he's visibly upset and helpless, he gets into a heated argument with Etienne along the way. As they board the boat, they start discussing the mainland, talking about how it's overrun with zombies and completely destroyed. Upon arriving at the shore, they throw Henry out of the boat, leaving him begging to come back with them. Haynes, still angry at Henry for what he did to the women, starts beating him and even fires a gun near him, ordering him to leave and never come back. They then sail away, leaving Henry behind. Back on the island, Beatrice goes to check on the growing water supply problem, which has escalated beyond control. A worker finds a strange radio device and shows it to Beatrice, who is shocked because radios are banned on the island. She wonders how it got there. The chief engineer, Ulick, manages to fix the water issue and receives Beatrice's gratitude for his hard work. He takes the opportunity to ask if he can bring his wife from the mainland since she is not infected, but Beatrice sadly refuses. Meanwhile, the team that dropped off Henry decides to explore the mainland for samples. They leave Linus behind on the boat while they search. Maya, one of the team members, meets a man named Eric on a bridge, an old associate of theirs. Suddenly, a disheveled man appears and tries to force his way onto their boat to return to the island. They shoot him in self-defense. Maya offers Eric some fresh food, and in exchange, he gives them medicine. They return with 2 large crates of supplies. Back at the boat, Linus, tired of waiting, decides to explore the area on his own. He encounters a group of survivors who tell him the virus is over, but Linus doesn't believe them. When they approach him, he threatens them, and they mock him before leaving. Later, a young boy named Mojek approaches Linus and gives him a vial of medicine, telling him there's a huge supply of it on a nearby abandoned ship. Linus, intrigued, follows him to the ship and finds a large stash of medicine, along with lab equipment. Mojek offers to give it all to Linus, in exchange for safe passage to the island for him and his friend. Linus explains that he can't make that promise, but before he can act, he is surrounded by more survivors. Panicking, he runs away and tries to escape. Meanwhile, Linus's team returns to the boat. Out of nowhere, a man tries to remove Haynes's mask, leading to a struggle where they shoot him. They realize Linus is missing but are forced to leave without him due to the danger. As they prepare to leave, they spot Linus running toward them, desperately trying to catch up. He pushes a man out of his way and leaps onto the boat just in time. However, they notice a tear in Linus's suit, making them fear he could be infected. They inject him with a sedative to calm him down until they return to the island. Upon arriving at the island, Linus is punished severely for his actions. Merrick examines him, and Linus hands him the medicine, explaining everything that happened. Merrick decides to quarantine Linus to ensure he hasn't contracted the virus. Haynes is also brought in, as he appears to be unwell with rashes all over his body. Merrick examines him and realizes something is wrong. Merrick tests the medicine Linus brought and discovers it is indeed effective. Excited, he goes to Beatrice and asks her to send another team to the mainland to retrieve more supplies. However, Beatrice refuses, reminding him that 2 members of the first team are now in quarantine, and she can't risk sending more people. Before she leaves, she quietly tells Merrick to give Haynes a fake medicine because she doesn't want him to survive, hoping to get rid of him. Merrick feels trapped, torn between following Beatrice's orders and doing what he knows is right. The scene shifts to the mainland, where a group of people discovers Mojek's body washed up on the shore. They find medicine in his pocket and send Eric to look for Mojek's friends. Meanwhile, Henry wanders around aimlessly, trying to find a place to stay. By chance, he approaches a woman who initially threatens him to keep his distance, fearing he might be infected. To prove he is healthy, he even drops his clothes. Taking advantage of the moment, he tries to get closer to her, and eventually, she warms up to him, dancing together for a while. The woman takes Henry around the area, giving him clean clothes and explaining how she lives, trying to help him adjust to their way of life. She shares that she lived in a theater with her assistant until he died, leaving her to fend for herself. When Henry inquires about Laura, she refuses to talk about him, quickly changing the subject. As they enter her hideout, she shows him the food and water she has stored. Meanwhile, back on the island, Beatrice encourages Lisa, praising her for standing up to Henry and fighting back, asserting that she deserves a better life. She asks Lisa to be vigilant and aware of what's happening on the island. Lisa appears on television, expressing her satisfaction with Henry's punishment and stating that it's enough for him to live outside the island. In the laboratory, Merrick asks Judy for help with new tests. She is visibly upset upon seeing the samples, realizing they are young children. Merrick, however, reassures her that they frequently take samples from various groups to expedite their research on the cure. During this time, they learn that Haynes has died, which deeply saddens Merrick. Linus begins to show symptoms of the disease, with rashes appearing all over his body, which he tries to hide. As the islanders gather, Beatrice informs them of Haynes's death, and Maya feels responsible, believing she failed to protect her group. When she tries to speak up, Beatrice silences her, and her name is the last on the list for voting. Suddenly, Fiona, Lola's daughter, starts coughing violently, and soon others around her do as well. Panic spreads throughout the hall, and everyone begins to flee. Beatrice realizes they need to prioritize the first name on the death vote list. The council convenes and decides to arrest all the parents of children who are showing signs of illness, further escalating the tension and fear within the community. The next morning, Fiona keeps thinking about Lola and whether she might be pregnant. She goes to take a test and discovers that she is indeed pregnant. Fiona tries to convince her daughter to terminate the pregnancy because it's illegal and she could get in trouble. However, Fiona refuses and leaves the house angrily. Afterward, she tells Eric that she knows a boy who can cover for her in this situation and help her out. When she returns home, her mother tries to calm her down, urging her to think things through without pressure, and offers her tea before leaving. At that moment, Tom, Fiona's boyfriend, appears and reassures her that he won't abandon her and will support her. The next day, the lab where the infection in the samples is spreading. Merrick insists that they need to work more intensively and quickly to accelerate the results. He asks Judy to vaccinate the patients and learns from one of them that her brother sold her to Eric in exchange for food. Merrick then goes to check on Linus and finds him very sick and cold, noticing the rashes on his skin. He is deeply saddened for his son, realizing that since his return, he is sure he transmitted the infection. Linus tries to convince his father to use him in his experiments and test on him, wanting to help his father in any way before he dies. Meanwhile, on the mainland, Eric confronts the friends of the boy who died and shows them the body he has. He tells them that the islanders killed him and promises to provide them with a better life and food, while assuring them that if they reveal the location of the medicine he has, he will help them. However, Spark is suspicious and feels that Eric is deceiving them. Eric tries to prove his good intentions by sharing food with them and takes Spark aside to talk. He tries to convince him to help him reach the island in exchange for telling him where the medicine is located. Back at the lab, Merrick and Linus, where Merrick gives him the injection before he leaves. On his way out, he notices 100 sitting there, feeling sorry for her because she has been a prisoner for a long time. Merrick then proposes to her that he will help her escape from prison if she agrees to go to the mainland and reach the ship with the medicines. However, she refuses, saying she doesn't want to cause any more trouble. After that, Henry, starting to adjust to his new life, he approaches a girl on the street, asking her for help, but suddenly 3 strange-looking individuals appear behind him and shock him with electricity. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself tied up and stripped of all his clothes. He realizes that the girl he met was part of a plan and that they have agreed to eat him. When Henry mentions that he works with Laura, they hesitate and struggle to believe him, but they decide to take him to Eric to learn the truth. Henry tells them he is Beatrice's son and pretends that he was kidnapped and doesn't know how he ended up there. He explains that Wilma died from the virus and that her last wish was to give Eric all her possessions. Eric is thrilled to hear this and agrees to save Henry from death. They keep him tied up until they confirm that he is not infected with the disease. Eric then learns the full truth, that Beatrice actually expelled Henry from the island. Henry tries to save himself by offering to tell Eric all the entrances to the island and how to control it. Eric agrees to keep him around for his benefit. The next day, the council decides to bring someone from the mainland to live with them, replacing Heinz. They conduct interviews with several candidates, and an engineer's daughter, whom he has wanted to bring over for a while, appears on the screen. He tells them she is a pharmacist, well-versed in everything, and has a lot of experience. Merrick asks her a few questions, and she answers all of them correctly, moving on to the second round. Etienne took a new job because his wife, Lisa, is close to Beatrice and is fulfilling all her requests. He offering a drink to someone, telling them to keep it for themselves. Meanwhile, Beatrice gathers all the residents and discusses the best candidates for living on the island, stating that the top choices are Cassio and a talented surgeon named Daniela. Both pass all tests, but Daniela wins the vote. The engineer is upset about his wife's decision and pleads with Marek to find another solution, stating that he will have to go with her to the mainland and leave the place. However, Marek doesn't allow this, as he is the best engineer on the island. Meanwhile, Daniela arrives on the island, but unfortunately, 2 people from the mainland manage to sneak in without anyone noticing. The man who took the drink unable to resist it, drinking it all night long. The next morning, one of the newcomers from the mainland heads to the mill, determined to sabotage it. He sees the man and rushes to catch him, but he is disoriented and can't take more than a couple of steps before he loses his balance and falls, breaking his leg. Suddenly, an ambulance arrives to take him away, and they have no choice but to amputate his leg due to the severe damage. When Daniela arrives, she is horrified by the sight and quickly leaves. She learns the truth about herself, that she is not actually a doctor and only memorized the answers to the questions so she could pass the test and survive here. Daniela insists she will do anything asked of her. Just then, Judy walks in, having overheard their conversation. She is shocked to learn that Linus is injured and that Marek has been hiding the truth from her, using many more resources than allowed to treat his son, which is against their laws. In a fit of rage, Daniela attacks Judy with a fire extinguisher, killing her. She then asks Marek to help her cover up what happened and claims she can help him treat his son. Marek agrees to help her, and they dispose of Judy's body in the sea. The next day, Beatrice tries to convince Fiona to cooperate with her, explaining that Tom is in jail for breaking the rules. Fiona argues with her, insisting she doesn't care about what Beatrice is doing or the laws, and that she cannot be intimidated. That night, Tom in jail, receiving a visit from his parents who are worried about him. Tom reassures them that he is fine, but Linus's condition worsens. Marek tries to find a way to save Linus. The following day, Fiona is on her way to work when she suddenly collapses. When she wakes up, she finds herself in bed with Marek checking on her. He tells her that she was pregnant, but the child has died. Fiona's mother asks Marek to keep this a secret and not to tell anyone. Fiona feels that Judy hasn't been around for a while, so she goes to the man who had his leg amputated, hoping he might have seen Judy. He says he doesn't remember anything and only recalls waking up with his leg being cut off. While wandering around, she accidentally finds Judy's tooth stuck in the wall and rushes to Marek, thinking he might have killed Judy. But Marek threatens her, saying she can't do anything to him because she needs him. Without him, everyone else could die. She tries to gather evidence against him, teaming up with Lisa, showing everyone what she found, and calling for a vote on Marek's fate. Marek is very upset and frustrated as some refuse to vote, believing he is being wronged. The manager of the mill gathers everyone to discuss what happened to him, claiming that they conspired against him to take control of the mill and take his work from him. Lisa feels guilty about what happened and offers to help him with anything he needs at home. During this time, they gather all the residents to watch as the accused is tied up to be thrown into the sea as punishment. Marek then heads to the lab and tells Linus everything that has happened. He expresses feeling guilty and reminisces about the old days when the virus had just begun to spread and Linus was still young. Merrick bringing Linus back home from school, while at the same time his wife Tessa is in the hospital, collecting samples from the deceased infected individuals. Merrick tries to navigate past a checkpoint, insisting he is healthy and not infected. He then goes to the market to buy some supplies and sees Fiona, who urges him to take a large amount of food. Afterward, he meets with Marie, and they agree to collaborate on a lab to work together to find a cure for the virus and treat the infected. In the meantime, Beatrice gathers the people around her and tells them they need to take control of the store and its supplies to ensure everyone's needs are met, preventing anyone from taking more than their fair share. They follow her orders and lock the place down, allowing no one to enter. She explains that a new system will be implemented to regulate food distribution, and everything will now be tracked and accounted for. Many people are unhappy with this new arrangement. Beatrice decides to use intimidation tactics to control the crowd, instructing her staff to act as if they have weapons, threatening the people to ensure compliance. When the store manager arrives, they take him hostage. Beatrice demands the employees vote on what to do with him, and they decide to kill the man and hand over control to her. Afterward, she intimidates the onlookers outside and escapes with all the weapons they had. Meanwhile, Henry watches the chaos unfold. The next day, Beatrice contacts the police on the island, informing them that she has established a new system for the island's safety and offers the officer a deal to control all the island's inhabitants. The officer initially declines until she reveals that she has taken one of their own hostage and that she and her crew can eliminate all the police officers on the island. She successfully takes control of the pharmacy on the island and begins filming her actions to show the residents that she is doing good for them and that her only goal is to protect them from harm. Merrick is vehemently opposed to everything happening and threatens to report her to the authorities, but Beatrice counters that she has control over everything, including the police, and advises him to cooperate with her for his own good. She promises to provide him with all the medicine he needs at any time and assist him with his tests. Later, the mayor gathers everyone, but Beatrice and her crew interrupt him, accusing him of being the reason for the chaos and failing to control the situation. She portrays him as a failure to the crowd, trying to turn public opinion against him and positioning herself as the island's leader. Merrick attempts to expose their true nature, but the police chief silences him. The crowd becomes rowdy, and some people start to support Beatrice, leading to a fight that results in one of the residents dying. They decide to dispose of the body in the sea. Beatrice manages to manipulate the minds of the people, effectively taking control over them. Meanwhile, Tessa is alone at night, making significant progress in her tests. However, a group of people suddenly attacks the hospital, causing chaos everywhere. They target Tessa, and she threatens to drop a vial, claiming that if she does, they will all be wiped out, but no one believes her. They continue to assault her, and Merrick watches the horrifying scene unfold on video, feeling helpless as he sees his wife die right before his eyes. At this time, Beatrice is contemplating how to stabilize the island and keep it away from everything happening. Suddenly, she sees the number 513 repeated, realizing it refers to the population that will remain on the island, and she decides to implement this plan. Laura becomes increasingly frightened by Beatrice's thoughts, sensing that they lead down a dangerous path and tries to dissuade her. However, Beatrice threatens her, insisting that if she doesn't comply, no one will be able to save her. Beatrice offers Laura all the medication she needs for her diabetes, as she is a patient, leaving Laura with no choice but to agree. After some time, the beach is filled with dead bodies due to the virus, and Laura takes samples from these corpses. She begins to fulfill her agreement with Beatrice by infecting some of the residents to eliminate them. Anyone who receives the injection becomes ill and dies. Merrick tries to check on everyone to see who is infected, documenting everything as it unfolds to suit Beatrice's agenda. Beatrice pressures Merrick to record half of the island's population as infected. Initially, he refuses, but she reminds him of his wife and what happened to her, ultimately persuading him to agree. She assures him that she will provide anything he needs at any time, ensuring that neither he nor his son will lack anything. They then start labeling anyone as infected, even if they are not, and prepare to evacuate everyone on a boat. Eventually, exactly 513 people remain on the island, and anyone who tries to object is killed immediately. Returning to the present, Linus speaks with his father, expressing that everything he has done is wrong, and that he should never have listened to Beatrice or collaborated with her, no matter the circumstances. He tells his father that he loves him, Derek Yor, and wishes he could stay with him. In that moment, Linus dies. Merrick, in shock, decides to take the recording of Beatrice's crimes and show it to the entire island. However, Fiona intervenes, urging him to continue as she wants to expose everything happening. Daniela suddenly pulls out a gun, and Fiona insists he gets the recording. She shoots at it, saying that Eric is coming and everything will change. Meanwhile, Eric has arrived at the ship containing the medicine, collecting all the supplies to implement his plan. He and his group deal with the council and eliminate them, successfully rescuing all the island's residents from the chaos they've been enduring, while also bringing the medicine with them. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button